So if you want to know the difference between a Stihl chain and a Husqvarna chain, let me show you the difference. It's a small difference, but it's huge. If you wonder why I've got a couple garbage cans full of water, we just had that storm come through. You know, it's funny, with YouTube, you can watch the storm move across the country based on the YouTuber you're watching. So I saw Human talking about the storm like 3 days ago. Cotton Top was talking about the storm 2 days ago. And we got the storm yesterday, and so it's the day after. And these buckets are in case the power goes out, we have water to flush. And the branches are just in case some animal decides to go for a swim, give them a way to get out. So yesterday, it pretty much was pouring all day. I would have to guess we got 2 to 3 inches of rain. And we had winds that I'm gonna guess they said they would peak in the low 60s. I don't know, they were peaking somewhere between 50 and 70 miles an hour. And what happened was these 2 branches fell off the tree over here and ended up on my play set. Not my play set, my kid's play set. So I don't know if it's going to be today or tomorrow. Probably tomorrow we'll come out and take care of this. But what you're looking at, I don't want to walk under there because that's not a good idea. But you know, what you're looking at here, this to me is a very easy job for my Husqvarna battery chainsaw. There's no need for a gas chainsaw whatsoever with this job. And you know, if people wonder why you would get an electric or a battery powered chainsaw, with a sharp battery powered chainsaw, you've got a lot less weight, no fumes, no noise when it's not running, and you can, you know, very nicely chew through something like this. So tomorrow we'll come out and I don't know how I'm going to film this. I mean, I don't want that to fall on me, especially on YouTube. This is a sugar maple here. And when we bought our house, the house is surrounded by sugar maples. I have an old farmhouse that was built, give or take 1820, you know, that's what it says on the side of the house. But they would plant sugar maples next to the house to give it shade, which is really awesome. The only problem is with sugar maples as they get older, they have very narrow crotches in them. So if you look at this tree right here, I think there's a crotch right here. You see how narrow that is? And then you see in this tree back here, see how narrow that is? I guess they don't all have narrow crotches, but they can have narrow crotches. And that's what's more likely to split when there's a lot of wind or a heavy storm. That crotch, a very narrow crotch, is much more likely to split than, just for the sake of argument. So this is a narrow crotch, the shadow, but this branch coming this way is much less likely to split off of a tree because it's not as acute, as narrow. So maples, sugar maples have, you know, narrow crotches, and it's a fairly brittle wood, and as they get older they tend to split. So my wife and I absolutely love the house we live in. Wouldn't move, but my house is surrounded by sugar maples. And you know, I've had an arborist in one time to do some pruning, and another time to do some limbing up, and then another time after we had something called a microburst or a macroburst a couple years ago to clean up fallen branches. But if you've got sugar maples, I just want to give you guys a heads up for my landscaping viewers. Try not to plant your sugar maples close to the house, even though they do give off really nice shade, because they, as they get older, they tend to lose branches, and they're big trees, so it costs a lot of money to get a guy up in that tree to work on it, especially the ones by the house. So I replaced the chain on my Husqvarna here, my battery Husqvarna. Oh, thank God that's not turned on. Would have scared myself there. I want to talk to you guys a little bit before we get out and do some work, just about chains and ordering chains. And just for demonstration purposes, this is my Husqvarna. It's a T535i XP. So this is a saw that I purchased in 2019. And then this is a 020 AV Super. Purchased that one in 1992. So imagine in 1992 if somebody told me that someday you could get a saw like that. I wouldn't have believed him. But what I want to talk about is the chain. So this is the chain off of the Husqvarna. And I don't know if you guys can see or not, but I broke a lot of the cutters off. I filed it a little bit too far, and I went and cut some very dry. I was actually cutting up some ash I had that I had milled, and I didn't do anything with. So I was cutting it up to put on the fire, and with the cutters this short, it just broke a lot of them off. So I guess the first lesson is don't file your cutters that short. I think the rule of thumb is if the chain has markings, well, maybe that's on some. I know on some of the saws, if they have like a witness mark to use to sharpen by, you're not supposed to go past the witness mark, but boy, that would be a pretty short cutter. So read your directions and see what it says about how much to sharpen a chain. The chain on the Husqvarna T535, we're just going to call it a T535, Husqvarna T535. This is a 043 gauge chain. So here's the box from this chain. It's a 12-inch chain. It's an 043 gauge. It's a 3/8 inch pitch, and it's got 45 drive links. Okay, so you see this? This is the Husqvarna new chain. I got two chains. This chain here is the chain off of my old 020, which is a 16-inch chain. And this is a, this might be a historic box here, but this has 55 drive links. The gauge is 050, and the pitch is 3/8 pico, which is I think pico is low profile. I mean, I know it's low profile. Maybe pico is what Stihl means by low profile. I believe both of these are low profile. 3/8 inch pitch, low profile chains. There's a 3/8 inch pitch chain and a 3/8 inch pitch low profile. And I just want you guys to notice, and maybe we'll just kind of introduce you guys to ordering chains. There's three things you need to know if you're going to order a chain. Stihl Chainsaws, if you look very carefully, it's kind of worn. You'll see right over here, it'll give you the pitch, it'll give you the pitch, the gauge, and the drive links. I know it says 050 on this one. So with Stihl saws, I know the bar will have all the information you need. With Husqvarna, there is like a model number on there, but it's, you can just barely see it here, but it doesn't really say pitch, gauge, drive links. But I'm pretty sure with Stihl bars and possibly other Husqvarna bars, it does. But if you're ordering a chain, you need to know the pitch, gauge, and the number of drive links. And it takes a while to get it, but once you have these three numbers, or to understand it for new guys, but once you understand it, it's very easy to order chain, online. I bought this chain, this advanced cut chain, from a place called loggerchain.com or frawleysawshop.com. Somebody put a comment in one of my videos years ago, and they have a ton of different Oregon chains, quick delivery, reasonable prices. So I get most of my chain, pretty much all of my chain, from loggerchain.com, or I'll go to the dealer once in a while and get some. But the three things you need are, you need the pitch, And all the pitch is if you take three rivets, let's see if we can do this, 3 rivets, any 3 rivets on your chain, and measure the distance. So here we're going to start at see if we can start at like 1. And it's kind of tough to show here, but let's start at 3 just for simplicity. So if we start at 3 centered on the rivet, you'll see that it's 3/4 of an inch between 3 rivets. So you take that number and you divide by 2, and that gives you the pitch, which is 3/8 of an inch. So even though these are both 3/8 inch pitch chain, if we do the same on this chain, you'll see if we center the 3 on the rivet, hopefully you guys are seeing that it's 3/4 of an inch, and then you divide by 2. So these are both 3/8 inch pitch chains, and they're both low profile, and I know that low profile means that the cutter is closer to the chain than if you had a regular 3/8 inch pitch chain. But we're not going to really worry about that too much right now. The gauge is the thickness of the metal in the chain. Okay, so this is an 043 gauge chain that's on the Husqvarna, and this is an 050 gauge chain on the Stihl. So you can see it's a little bit of a bulkier chain. Definitely a heavier chain. Now the Husqvarna, because it's battery, they went with a fairly lightweight chain, and you know, I've had no issues with it. It does the job, and I think the Stihl battery saws have even smaller. I don't know if it's the pitch or the gauge. Something's a 1/4 inch on the Stihl battery saws. So the first thing, the first thing we need to know is the pitch. And I just want to show you this tool I got at Logger Chain, and I literally have never used this tool, but it did look like it was pretty cool to have. So see here where it says 3/8, so that should be the distance between 2 rivets. So if we look at this, so the next thing we need to know is the gauge, which is the thickness of the metal. And this tool has these cool little slots here. So if you slide, good luck on that, if you slide the chain, that's the Stihl. So if you look there, it's 1.3 millimeters or 050 gauge. This chain is not going to fit. This chain is not going to fit through the 043. And I'm hoping you guys can just believe me on that one. So the Husqvarna chain, okay, so that was not easy to do, but if you take a look, you can see that we are through the 043 slot there. So the gauge of that chain is 043. Okay, so we know the pitch, we know the gauge, and now we need to know how many drive links. And I want to show you, you know, I've never actually ordered a chain by measuring the pitch, gauge, and drive links, but I just thought you guys might want to know. I mean, if you look at the manual, it's going to say, you know, use this size bar and you know, a chain this size with this many drive links, and you know, that's the recommended chain and bar. So unless you buy a chainsaw used where somebody, you know, went outside the box, you can just read the manual, you know, because we all read the manuals. That is a good piece of information where you'll get the pitch gauge and drive links, and you can order any manufacturer's chain you want. So what I try to do when I store chains is leave notes as far as what they are, so I know at a glance, you know, what I have available. So this is 3/8 inch pitch, 050 gauge, and 72 drive links. This is for a Stihl 20-inch bar. So if you want to know the difference between a Stihl chain and a Husqvarna chain, let me show you the difference. It's a small difference, but it's huge. The box for a Stihl chain opens and closes. It's not like heat sealed. See that? You can store more chain. The box for a Husqvarna chain, they heat sealed that, man. It's not coming open. Oh, so we're gonna have to get a knife and cut that. So if you're trying to choose between two chains, go with the Stihl because it's easier to open. I'm sure they all have their own unique differences, but the box is easier to open on a Stihl. And Oregon, they're just in cardboard boxes. You just open it, pop it out. Yeah, that's not coming off, guys. They closed that forever. I wonder if we cut this end, is it gonna go better? So I just want to show you guys another thing. Whenever you're putting a chain on a bar, pretty much anticipate that it's going to have two loops, and it's going to take you a while to figure out how to undo those loops. And I would say I should probably be wearing gloves. And usually you think you're undoing them, but you just end up moving them around until eventually you figure out that you got to kind of pull one side of the loop through, and there you go. But those two circles you see, just take a deep breath. Eventually you'll figure it out, but the first few times are going to really be a pain in the butt. Okay, so here's the Husqvarna chain, and I think you can see, you know, it's got a real nice coating of oil on there. You always want to make sure you have a good coating of oil when you store your chains. But it looks like I bought a chain with safety depth gauges, which is not... It's a good idea, but you see how these depth gauges are extra large? That means it's less likely to kick back at me. But I prefer a smaller profile depth gauge. So I don't know what I was thinking on that one. But if you look at this chain, so this is a low profile chain and this is a regular chain. They're both 3/8 inch gauge. So between the rivets is 3/8 on both of them. I mean, every chain here, I'm sorry, every chain here is 3/8 of an inch pitch. There's 3/8 of an inch between the rivets. The top two chains here are 050 gauge Okay, the thickness of the metal in the chain is 050. These bottom two are 043 gauge. But I do just want you to see that this is what's known as a low profile chain. The cutters don't stick up quite as high. And this is, you know, your regular profile chain. And this one, you know, again, it's a much heavier chain. You know, they're both 050 gauge. They're both 3/8 pitch. But this one is, there's just a lot more mass to it because it's not a low profile. So I'm not sure if I, you know, helped or confused you guys there, but I thought I would just go over that a little bit with you. And, you know, I don't expect you guys to know this right away, but to just be familiar with pitch, gauge, and drive links. To this day, I still have to think about it, and I'm sure I flubbed it many times, the pitch and the gauge. But just remember, your pitch, gauge, and drive links is all you need for ordering chain. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for today. I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the chains before we got started, and I think what I'm going to do is I'll split this into 2 videos, and maybe tomorrow morning we'll go cut those branches. One thing I want to just kind of show you guys, which, you know, I guess only the arborists are going to really appreciate, is the weight of this Husqvarna battery saw. You know, I just want to kind of hold it here as I'm talking, and, you know, I don't know how to convey how light this is, but I'm doing a decent job, you know, holding it. This is doable. I'm not really sure how long. I'm not in my 20s anymore, but, you know, just notice that I'm holding this saw. It's harder the farther out I go. So what I want to do now is just give my arm a chance to relax. Now the 020 here has a 16-inch bar. I know you would never use this configuration up in the trees. You'd probably have a 12 or 14 on. But, well, you know, it's heavier. I guess I can do it. But, you know, if I was going to be up in a tree with one of these saws, I'd rather use that saw until the branches got bigger. You know, the weight difference, I think I mentioned in one of my other videos, sharpening a chainsaw can make a small chainsaw perform like a bigger saw. So, well, that may have a small bar. If you're good at sharpening, I mean, you can bury that bar in a piece of wood and it's going to cut perfectly fine. And don't get me wrong, gas is going to be faster. Professional gas is going to be faster than that Husqvarna. You know, I mean, this saw would smoke the Husqvarna. But as far as weight, you know, this is a lot more weight to move around. So that's just another thing to consider. Before I got the battery Husqvarna, I would have been reaching for this guy. But this, you know, I think I measured it. It's only like the part that actually does the cutting on this saw is only, it's called a 12-inch bar, but I think it's only like 10.5 inches from the dogs. These are actual metal dogs on this saw. It's like 10.5 inches. But I can bury this 10.5 inches in anything, you know, and it'll perform perfectly fine. Much lighter, only makes noise when you pull the trigger, and you're not sucking in fumes. You know, you're not going to mix fuel. You know, I really do like this battery stuff. They're not as powerful as gas. I know a lot of guys are going to harp on batteries not as powerful as gas. But I want to say if you can do it with the battery tool, and it might be a little bit slower sometimes, I would prefer to do it with the battery tool because of the fumes, not needing gas, and lighter weight. You know, whether it's the saw or the weed whacker, that's my opinion. You're never, you know, you're still going to need the gas saws for the bigger stuff, but I don't think battery's a joke anymore, you know. And I've got a blower and a weed whacker I want to show you guys too, but I just don't think battery tools are a joke. And for what I do as a landscaper, you know, if you're going to remove a foundation planting, this is the perfect saw for zipping shrubs out, you know. Easy to get into an old yew and, you know, slice it and dice it and throw it in the back of the truck and take off. So this was a rambly one, guys. It's COVID-19. A lot of us are home. I thought you might enjoy a longer video, but we'll set the camera up tomorrow and see if we can cut that tree down without being on Idiots with Chainsaws, and we'll see how it goes. Take care, guys. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.